Resistance is futile. You will watch the video. Hello, and welcome to another Caitian Star Pride production. Unfortunately, today we have something a little different. Today's topic, the Borg. How he hates them and how he loves them.
As usual, we have our two usual suspects with me. We have MCU, we have Saran. Our special guest had to opt out at the last minute. So, boys and ghouls, let's see what we got.
Okay, well, the Borg were first seen in the episode Q-Who, but were sort of kind of referenced in the Neutral Zone, which was the Season 1 ender for Next Generation. And thank God that season ended. Anyway, they are a race of cybernetic, or a pseudo-race of cybernetic creatures.
The origin's never been firmly established. However, there was a series of Enterprise-era books that implied a probable origin series. Unfortunately, they were absolutely caca. But they do explain the origin of a Borg queen and why the base model is a human.
That does bring up an interesting thing. Originally, the Borg were did not have a queen. The idea was that instead of facing a single leader, we were facing the collective minds of all of the Borg, all simultaneously.
Which makes it a lot more fearsome and a lot more dangerous.
That also would prove problematic, most likely.
Not necessarily.
No, not if you have good networking. I mean, computers work much better when you can connect one computer to the next. That way you have more processing power. So basically, the races they assimilate help to build up that processing power.
Granted, communication lag times do become an issue in some cases, but, we work with what we work with.
Yeah, and the thing is, with a single leader, they can make mistakes, and boy does the Queen make a lot of mistakes, as we see on First Contact, which was where the Queen was introduced, and on Voyager. But it's much less likely with the combined whole.
Indeed, because it wasn't necessarily that all Borg were acting in concert. For example, 7 of 9 tertiary adjunct to Unimatrix 001, did I remember that? Her unit of 9 would be a single unit, 9 processors working in parallel. However, you wouldn't necessarily be drawing from the entirety of the collective at once, but they could probably pull knowledge. So, I need to know how to build a nuclear reactor. Somebody in the collective knows it, you know it, but it's not there until you search for it. You're only working as a parallel processor on your ship or your grouping. Otherwise, the communications would take up so much bandwidth or whatever that would be ridiculous.
Well, the Borg would be able to equip quite a significant punch in the bandwidth area.
The Borg are perhaps the most implacable Star Trek villain that exists, with 2 notable examples. Enterprise and Voyager. Yes, they show up in a single episode of Enterprise, and it is ridiculous. Because if it actually happened the way they show it, the Borg would already know about Earth.
Yeah, and I think they did a passable job, at least. It was certainly one of the better episodes of the second season. But,
And we shall not get into how they were improperly dealt with in Voyager. Voyager should never have made it more than a couple hundred light years before it became debris or a Borg ship.
Made for a good series, though.
I'm waiting for thunder and lightning to come down and smite you for such an improper statement. Okay, but getting on to things. One of the things that makes the Borg what they are is the shape of the ships. There are 3 main ships that we ever see in any of the series. We see a Borg scout ship, which is it looks like a brick, more or less, with some additional stuff. We see the Borg spheres, and then we see the cube. Now, the cube is perhaps the largest spaceship in the Star Trek universe that we know of, at least. Voyager being a very special case. The Borg cube is completely ridiculous for most species if you look at it. But at the same time, it is one of the most efficient uses of space, the sphere being slightly better, that exists. And since they have no aesthetics, for example, the Federation, with the notable exception of Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, and later on a lot of this STO, have a design aesthetic of 2 nacelles, a saucer, and engineering section. They sometimes will negate this part or that part, but it's a basic design precept. The Borg don't have to follow any design precepts. They just go for efficiency above all.
Indeed. Moving into the STO version of the Borg, the ships look pretty good, but then it's kind of hard to screw that up.
The scaling is all off, though. The problem I have with them, the scaling is ridiculous. The Borg cube that we encounter in Q-Who is supposed to be what? More than a mile to a side? I've heard some placing it at 16 kilometers to a side, which I think was actually incorrect. But they're huge.
Don't even get me started with the scaling issues in this game. I look at like the cube, and then I see, like that new aquatic carrier from the Xindi lockbox flying in STFs, and I'm like, really? They aren't even the same, close to being the right size.
Yep. The cubes are not the implacable foes in Star Trek Online, and now that has to be done. It has to be, because we encounter the Borg at low levels. But the Borg in STO are not the Borg we came to know and fear.
Yeah, and so ship design, okay, but the drones are the part that I have the biggest issue with design-wise. Since I bring this up since Saran and I are both artists, and I'm a concept designer, so I like designing all manner of creatures and stuff like that. And I think the zombie approach that Cryptic took with the design was a bit problematic, to say the least.
Well, it is indicative of how they used to be. In DS9, they were very methodical. They were very, you do your task, and they actually had a couple times where you just had a Borg drone walking into a wall. I mean, literally just bouncing off the wall because its commands had gotten screwed up or it didn't quite understand what it was doing. The zombie motif actually makes them scarier in a real sense, where you only have 1 or 2, quote, personalities like Locutus, and the rest of them are these essentially faceless creatures that have no personality, no individuality. It is the erasure of self.
And that is a good point, but I still feel that, zombies have been done to death, so to speak. And I like some of the First Contact Borg a lot better design-wise.
How so?
I do find them a lot more menacing, actually, than the ones in the game. And they were certainly an improvement over the original Borg that we saw on TNG, which, as SF Debris called it, I think Jacques Cousteau crossed with a Kabuki dancer.
Well, they did have a shoestring budget after all.
Yeah. I mean, even when the Borg were at that level, they were budget busters.
Yeah, because you had to put all that stuff on them. And each suit, of course, would have to be individually created. You couldn't have just this basic, I put Borg vest on you and now you're a Borg.
Yeah. And part of the brilliance when they redesigned the Borg for First Contact was there were... And this is actually a good trivia question, so we'll have to cut this out of the recording.
No, you don't have to. Trivia's only from the Culture Doc.
Okay. But it might be an interesting trivia question anyway.
Yeah.
There were only 6 suits built for the Borg in First Contact. Or maybe it was 8 or 10 or something like that. But they were designed as a series of interchangeable pieces so that it could give the illusion that there were more, there was a little bit more diversity among the Borg.
That's a logical way to do it, especially because one of my problems with Borg is that you don't have any, quote, standard Borg appearance. You know, you've got, they got the flesh is necrotic almost, and you've got the mechanics, but there's no, you know, new standardization of what they put on them.
Unless you're in Star Trek Online.
Yeah, well, that's graphics.
Yeah, I mean, trying to put all that together for a video game would just... it would kill their computers.
It technically actually wouldn't be that hard. I mean, think about it. That's kind of like, if you've ever played that game a while back, it was called Spore. That's kind of what this is, what we're talking about right now. Just have a basic body and then put randomized pieces onto it. I used to dabble in game design, and I can understand that, you know, doing that kind of thing, randomizing pieces to glue to a skeleton, that honestly isn't all that hard. Granted, it probably isn't plausible with their code as current, but still, I mean, it's a possibility.
That's true. Although I do like the headpieces. I do like that those are standardized, and the prosthetic devices. But I think that had they either evolved the First Contact design a little bit more, or and I'll have to find some pictures of it on the internet. If they had gone back to some of the earlier Borg concept drawings, which were very heavily inspired by the work of H.R. Giger.
Yeah, that's a scary man.
Yeah, I think the Borg would have been much more menacing in the game if they had gone that direction.
I agree. The thing is, like we said, it's limited by the graphics they're willing to use.
Well, and going back to the argument against the zombie thing, not only is it overdone in media today, but, at least in my opinion, it takes yet another aspect of the Borg and makes it literal. Like the Queen did when they introduced her in First Contact. It took the insect hive mentality that they had, and she made that literal. And the same thing here is the zombie-like aspect has been taken to its literal extreme.
I'll agree with that to some extent, but at the same time, they always did have that sort of mentality and that sort of plodding, methodical nature, which makes some sense because that's a very efficient system. The downside is that it's also the system that the Russians were, quote, famous for using in World War II. It's steamroller tactics. You just have so freaking many, and you've got, I mean, their ability to adapt to weapons makes them ridiculously hard to overcome. Unless, of course, they were smart enough to start issuing solid shot weapons, which we actually saw something like in one of the DS9 episodes.
TR-160.
No,
Yep.
Sorry, I coughed.
not the sniper rifle. There was
Well,
O'Brien.
that was technically a sniper rifle, though.
No, he had a shotgun. On that primitive world, and he was dealing with the Jem'Hadar who had an energy dampening field, he ran across a freaking cowboy
What?
with a slug thrower.
I don't... What episode was that?
I'll have to look it up because maybe I'm thinking of a book, but I'm pretty sure I saw.
Are you talking about the Voyager episode where they found all those people from history?
No, DS9.
That must have been a book. But actually, the rifle that Sauron was talking about was from... Can't remember the name of the episode, but
Devil
Ezri
Within or
Dax.
something like that.
Yeah. Esri Dax is investigating a series of murders, and the TR-16B. Did I say that one right?
I think it's 116B, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. Anyway, that weapon was a prototype in the show, but Starfleet. It was designed to fight specifically against the Borg because in First Contact we saw Picard using a Tommy gun on the holodeck, and he completely overcame the Borg adaptation using that. So they invented this weapon which could fire a bullet and simultaneously engage a transporter on that bullet so that it would rematerialize right in front of the target.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the logical flaws with that we've seen in Trek. But
You obviously
anyway,
have not played Portal.
yes, I have. And I've gotten stuck in the recursive loop where I get stuck between two portals and keep going and bouncing 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 and bouncing.
You must not have learned much of momentum then.
Yes, but here's the problem. Portal and transporters are not the same. Anyway.
But you did get one thing wrong when you mentioned it in the in your videos about that rifle. It wasn't banned because it was absolutely lethal. They just stopped researching it and instead continued working on a phaser-type weapon. Because, of course, they just stopped researching it because having a weapon that would actually work against the Borg would make sense.
I thought that... What was his name? Garrick? I thought that he told Esri that they didn't make them anymore because it had been banned in Starfleet. I could have sworn that he said that.
It's possible. We're getting a little off topic, though.
Oh well, sorry.
Yeah,
Back to the Borg.
Okay, so getting past the Borg design, how do you guys feel about the Borg story arc? Which, of course, begins with a tutorial, and then continues, or it begins with a tutorial, totally dropped, and then we get back to it towards the end of the game.
Well, like you were saying, the interesting thing about the Borg story arc is, like you said, it's in the tutorial, then it gets dropped for a while. And then we have the Borg versus Undyne thing that we have now. Or, actually, it's still called Borg Advance. Weird. Anyway, but after that, and I'm not sure if you guys knew that or not, but all the STFs actually follow up from when the tutorial started. Starting with Kittimer.
Okay, so
You
we're
see,
going
the story
back
behind
in time?
so the original Kittimer Vortex thing, it was actually before season 6? Season 6? Yeah, season 6. It was one big mission, both ground and space. So what happened is that you would go into the Kittimer Vortex area and find, the portal and the 2 gates as we have it now, and then we'd actually go through that spinning gate at the end, as everyone sees, but no one really knows what it does now. That would take you to the ground portion where we'd be back at the Vega colony that we were at the tutorial. And that was where the Borg had gone through time to assimilate the Vega colony for some reason or another. I can't remember exactly. Right, they built the underground facility that you see in Kittimer and Stasis. And then when you see Dinatra beam up, that's when we leave Vega and go back through the portal to the original Kittimer Vortex area, and that's how it defeats her. So they kind of split it off, and it's not really comprehensive anymore, but that's how the original story went.
Well, that raises an interesting question of how the new tutorial affects that kind of storyline, because originally in the tutorial we beat the Borg,
Right.
and they were forced to retreat. Now they've won, and
Well,
it does.
You see that's the whole temporal paradox kind of thing. Because if you remember in the original tutorial, all the Borg that we fought were injured. None of them were working properly. And that was because us in the future went back and destroyed most of them while they were originally there, before us as ensigns got there.
Interesting. But that does raise the issue. Now it's been completely contradicted by the Borg's total assimilation of Vega Colony. And now Admiral Quinn sort of makes reference to, well, we'll just quarantine the system until we figure out what to do.
Well,
And
in the original story of the STS, we weren't so much going back to save Vega Colony as it was to stop the Borg from using that underground facility for, I can't remember what reason it was.
but I'm saying that the new tutorial sort of renders that completely inert now.
I actually have not played that part of the tutorial. I don't know how I missed it when I started Derek on my other character, but I never got to that for some reason.
Well, if you do get a chance, you should definitely give it a playthrough.
I'm actually tempted to just make a new temporary character to just see it now again.
Yeah, I think that would probably be a good idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, in the new tutorial, spoilers, the Borg have, you know that spaceship that we saw crashed on Defera? Well,
You mean the big planet assimilator thing?
yep.
Yeah.
Well, the Borg sent those in the new tutorial, and within a few hours, the Borg have completely assimilated Vega. And you have to fight some of the assimilated civilians. Although how you and your bridge officer who accompanies you and how anyone else has escaped assimilation is beyond me.
But key to gameplay. That's the point.
Yeah, that's true. It just makes no logical sense.
Granted, a lot of things in this game and in Star Trek in general don't make much logical sense. They don't make much logical sense. But they are necessary to tell the story. It wouldn't be as interesting or as exciting to watch and tell if it wasn't.
We'll agree to disagree on that one, but anyway, you evacuate a few of the civilians, then pretty much leave Vega. And you talk to Admiral Quinn about, getting permanent command of your ship. And there's the option of asking him, well, what do we do about Vega? And he says, well, we'll sort of quarantine it until we figure out what to do or how to counteract this process.
By the way, I was just looking for it, and you guys are right, apparently. It probably was a book, even though I can, honest to God, swear I saw him with a shotgun. Oh, well.
Well, that might have been, jeez, I can't remember episode titles all of a sudden. But there was a two-parter where they, went back to the, Bell riots.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that one.
Oh, in Deep Space Nine?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it wasn't that one. It was him going to take down a Jem'Hadar complex.
Now, are you talking about that... I keep thinking, was it O'Brien that went to that one planet where they were, growing the Jem'Hadar?
I think that might have been the episode.
Yeah, that. I keep thinking of that every time you mention that.
It's just him alone, though. It's nobody else, I don't think.
No. Well, Bashir was with him.
Well, we've gotten off topic again.
Episode 2.
We've gotten off
Yes,
topic
we
on this.
have, and I know
That's the
exactly.
whole point of this.
What was it, though? Which episode?
It was Hippocratic Oath, and it was a group of renegade Jem'Hadar who wanted to get themselves unaddicted from the Ketracel White.
Yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't the Iconian Gateway one then.
There was not a Iconian gateway in Deep Space Nine?
Yeah, a renegade group of Jem'Hadar had found it, and
Oh, yeah.
then they have to go and ally with Jem'Hadar to go and destroy it.
Oh, yeah. I remember that now. That was a long time ago.
Okay, completely off topic. Another thing that makes no sense is we're continuing from the discussion last time. How does Starfleet manage to keep Vega quarantined while still fighting the Klingons, the Romulans, and whoever else?
Well, to be fair, we're no longer fighting the Klingons, so...
Yeah, but that's a year later.
True.
That mission takes place a year later.
From what we understand, Starfleet doesn't have any necessarily agreed upon strength at all, ever. It's implied that they may have 200 starships in Kirk's era, and they might have as many as 2,000 in time of the Dominion War. But even then, if you think about how big the Federation is, and if you're just looking at a two-dimensional plane even, that's a lot of freaking space.
True, though.
So you really wouldn't have the ability.
Except the Borg have complete control over an entire system now, which means they have an infinite, or, they have the whole colony, they have anyone that was not able to escape that planet, they probably have control of the other planets, but pretty much by the time we leave the system. And they can just convert those planets into ships, and every single cube could break through any quarantine line that we could build.
Yep, because in the non-game, it takes a fleet to take down a single cube.
Oh, and even in-game, you kind of need a little bit of help once in a while to take down a cube.
No, not necessarily.
I can take one out on my own.
Yeah, I mean, my main character flies an Aquarius destroyer, and he can take one out, actually.
And with my Voth Citadel or Bastion, whatever it is, flight deck carrier, or my
Yeah, you don't fly a Citadel.
Yeah, my or the old Fleet Audi, I could take out a Borg cube in Elite without trouble. I couldn't take out attack all the time, and I'd be kind of messed up.
Impossible to solo.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be kind of screwed up when I got done with it, but I could blow the damn thing up.
But yeah, that storyline gets dropped for quite a while, and it brings up something that I spotted on the forums, and I can't believe I didn't catch it while playing the game. Is that some of these arcs are actually out of order. Because when you finish up the Romulan missions, and about halfway through the Deep Space Nine missions, you're called in for a conference on the Borg. And there's the Deferi ambassador, Sarah, if I remember right, who mentions that the Borg have already attacked Vega, even though that's something that you tackle later in the game. And there are references to events that you don't get to play yet.
I don't particularly recall that, but okay.
I'm just going to nod my head and say yes, because I can't remember right now. My brain's still half shot.
I remember him saying something about Vega, but I don't remember him referencing anything that hasn't happened yet.
Well, he mentions that his own world has been scarred by the Collective.
For the past 5 years, yeah. Sorry, just had to get that little jab in there.
When we finally do get to the arc, I'm wondering, to the Borg versus Undine arc, what do you guys think of that one?
I think it's a lot better since they revamped it.
I would agree. And I do like the new look of the Borgified Undine.
Indeed, I do as well. Before, they kind of looked like they were put together in a couple minutes. Then again, so did all the other Undine. So.
Well, I still find a couple of major problems with them, like the three-legged locomotion is ridiculous and probably wouldn't work.
Well, if you had 3 legs, how would you run?
You couldn't. And
You don't have 3 legs. You don't know that.
The other thing is that if their ships are designed to deal with the pressure of fluidic space, the minute they come out into vacuum, their ships are going to explode. Because there's that much of a pressure difference. There has to be that much of a pressure difference.
That's a good point. Although I suspect that once the Borg started invading them back in Voyager's episode Scorpion, they probably sent a probe which exploded, and they realized maybe we should design our ships to be able to withstand the sudden pressure change.
Too many technical problems to deal with right now. But, ladies and germs, I think we're about at the end of our recording ability for the moment.
Don't call them germs. That's insulting.
The what? The germs? Life of Man, or ugly, brutish, and short.
We still have one more topic to cover with the Borg, which is the upcoming cooperative
Guy.
story arc.
We have to deal with Hugh as well. Maybe that's stuff for another time. But just remember, the best way to take out the Borg? Install Windows operating system on them. Alright, now, before I forget, we do have another trivia question. Once more, this is pulled from the culture document. You have 1 week as of the posting of this video, plus up to 1 day, depending upon the time of posting, to send an in-game mail to me with the answer. Completeness matters. Additional information will usually earn you bonus prizes. Now, here's the question for this week. What is the name of the Caitian god of chaos and chance, and/or order and predictability? And how is he most often represented?